Here we go again. And at number 44, we have another man from Szeged, Hungary, Peter Leko. He is born in Subotica, in what at the time is Yugoslavia, in 1979. But he moves to the city of Szeged at age 1. Peter Heine, this is someone we both know very well. I used to work for Peter in 2009 as a second. What, in your opinion, puts him into this top 50 list?
Well, I think clearly his main claim to fame is that he had a drawn World Championship match against Vladimir Kramnik in 2004. And he was actually taking the lead into the very dramatic final game. So he's been as close as anyone to actually becoming the world champion and dethroning Kramnik, who had taken the task of dethroning Kasparov. So at that point, Leko was a very serious contender for the world championship. I mean, obviously, he had to win the candidates ahead of most other top players to get there and such. And he was really established as one of the best players in the world. I think he's was number 4 is his peak ranking when he was there for almost two years at the time. And at that point, he was really seen as someone who might have a shot at the title, maybe as an outsider. He would have been quite a surprise to most had he won in 2004. But he was really up there for quite a while, and then he sort of took a bit of a detour a bit later in a way. But I think people tend to forget how good he was, how well respected he was, and also how close he was to the World Championship.
For sure. He starts off as this prodigy, being the youngest grandmaster in the world whenever it was in 1994. But in the early 2000s, I'm actually even surprised his peak was number 4, because the way I recall it, the gang back then pretty much was Kasparov, Leko, Kramnik, and Anand, who maybe Ivanchuk is in there, but to my mind, it was mainly these 4 taking turns at who could win tournaments and so on. Obviously, Kasparov and probably the other 2 are a notch above him, but he was very much on that level playing with these guys all the time.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't a surprise when he won in, when was that, 2003 in Dortmund?
Yeah, I think he won the final against Topalov, right? But I think at that point, he would have seen as a bigger surprise had Topalov won that Leko, which now with history sort of has happened. We wouldn't think so, but I think at that time Leko was the favorite of these 2 to win the final, clearly, right?
It's a little, I'm not sure. Is that a little before Topalov's absolute peak? I can't even recall. Topalov is older, but still, I think he peaked a little later. Anyway, Peter Leko, he's won, I would guess, quite a few of the major events as well, in spite of, being considered a bit of a drawish player, which I don't think is necessarily fair, but that was an image that he got throughout his career, maybe a little bit later as well. He's talked about when you start off as a prodigy and start playing against the world-class players very early at age, however old he was, 15 or something, and you don't have the opening ammo that, well, of course you would like to play for a win, but it's not so easy, and maybe that also some habits, which he then, I think, overcame winning this 2003 thing. Mm-hmm. So the defining moment is his match against Kramnik. What happens there? That's 2004. Chess politics are a bit weird, but the match finally happens.
Yeah, I mean, he managed to. I mean, you can see that maybe a prelude to Karjakin's strategy against Magnus, but still maybe not in as defensive way as Karjakin. But I mean, I think he was realistic. He thought that Kramnik is the best prepared player in the world. Let me try to beat him in practical skills. And for instance, he won one game where he tore him down in some kind of ending. And I think also, Leko started the match off playing 1e4, got nowhere against Kramnik's Petrov and basically gave up and started doing d4, which, as far as I know, he had only rudimentarily prepared before the match and such. So he actually reinvented himself on the fly and did that very successfully and such. And he also managed to block Kramnik basically with his marshal. I think before these games, there had been a lot of so-called anti-marshals, where Leko came up with one new idea after the other and somehow managed to frustrate Kramnik. And then Kramnik decided finally to take the bull by the horns. And I think also, well, I don't know if Leko was the first one to show how good an opening marshal was, but I guess the secret was still out there. But he was, I mean, it's been a while since someone used it at the World Championship level, right? And which we will see later, for instance, with Magnus, and your DVDs, for instance, and stuff like that, right? So,
yeah, I'm wondering if I can make a case for Short, but okay, that's where I'm not sure what Short's game.
Short did it at the World Championship, but he actually got outplayed by Gary and all these anti-marshals, right? I mean, you can say Short was on the right track, but he didn't seem to have the practical skills to uphold it. And that Leko did very much so. I mean, the marshal was a huge success against Kramnik, right?
Absolutely. So let's have a look at that game. By the way, I should correct myself. The Dortmund tournament, which Leko won to qualify for Kramnik, was in 2002. It then took a while to get that match together. So the tournament was in 2002 and the match in 2004. C3, D5. This is the Marshall Leko with the black pieces. The score is tight in the match at this point?
I think it's tight at this moment, right? And both players had huge difficulties getting any kind of pressure. I mean, it was, it was getting acclaim for being this very boring match, which happens when no one really can manage to break through. And as long as there's an equilibrium in the score, people will stick to this kind of solid strategy. But that equilibrium is broken at this point. And, it's the famous story that Kramnik was tired of playing this sort of small ball chess, and he was telling his seconds, okay, I want to bring on a theoretical duel, and he did.
Yeah, going over all these moves quickly, I've talked about them in so many places. Chessable.com/Jan for my entire Marshall repertoire, and I analyzed a lot of this with Peter Leko, who has been at the forefront, as Peter mentioned. So this position after 92 is where the fun sort of starts. I think Peter Leko was surprised by this Queen F1, which wasn't a big line at that time, and he started thinking by himself here. I
think, despite it becomes a horror show, it was actually very impressive preparation by Kramnik and his team. When you saw the analysis after the game, it was clear that Kramnik was into any kind of tactical detail, basically what Leko had to invent stuff on his own, and Leko got into huge time pressure and such. But anyway, let's see what actually happens.
Yeah. So this position, black decides between bishop f5, f5, and bishop h3. Okay. It's not a theory lecture. Eh? So Leko goes bishop f5, f3, knight to f6, rook to e1, rook to e8. All these moves have stood the test of time. What Leko's doing is very, very reasonable. Pawn to a4. Kramnik was still blitzing here, trying to put as much pressure as possible on Leko. Queen g6, a takes b.
Is that the
d3? I think AB is wrong. No, he had to play, I don't know, Queen F2 or... I can't recall, I think.
Maybe 94 is causing a draw or something like this, but yeah.
Bishop D3. We have a personal story around here, no? Didn't we?
Yeah.
We were hanging out during this match.
Yeah, we were following it. We had you call it training camp or hanging out, define it however you want. And also these days getting online was not so simple. So we had to go to a library in Copenhagen, Denmark, when we were having the camp, and we were following the games. And at that point, as I was not involved in any being a second from either of the players, I was doing some online betting on the games. And this was pre-engines being incredibly strong. So at this point, it would show that white is completely winning in this position, and Leko was very short of time. But maybe I had a moderately fast computer, but at some point it suddenly changed his mind heavily and said that actually black is winning. And I think the odds was more than 20 or something like that. So
I think even here, all of this was still blitzed out by Kramnik. And we started, back then you could still overrule the computer, like trying moves like Queen D3. And we figured maybe it's not white who's winning, maybe it's actually black. And it was profitable.
So
Leko found all this over the board. And it turns out that after Queen D3, white is helpless. I wish I looked at this before. I might embarrass myself. How does black actually win after a7?
Maybe queen e3 check or something like this.
King g2, bishop f3, yeah? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, queen e2 and knight g4 in the end, right?
F3, queen e2, king g1, knight g4, a8, queen check, king g7. It turns out that there's not very much white can do. I hope this is the correct line.
I hope this is right. I mean, queen c6, there is queen f2, f1, and knight f2 checkmate, but I don't know.
Not much I can spot. Yeah, anyway, back then we were able to figure that out. And so was Leko over the board in giant time trouble, which is impressive. If you get assaulted like that by a guy who you respect so much as a theoretician, you can often think, okay, I'm either lost or I have to make 15 only moves to make a draw. But to, you know, find the win, look for it, it's pretty good.
I mean, it must be so incredibly scary, right? You sit there and you're playing against the opponents. We're not playing Kramnik. You're playing whole team Kramnik and his computers and such, right? I mean, basically, it's an unforgivable spot to end up in, and he just keeps calm. And instead of trying to chicken out to a worse ending or draw something or play, you know, some kind of anti-computer move, he just does it all the way and he refutes his play. It's insanely good. I mean, and he must have. Well, we should ask Leko. He must have been so scared at the time, right? I mean, no, this is it's really huge class. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah, Kramnik realizes what he's done somewhere around here. He didn't play this king f2, but it was too late.
Kramnik was still in preparation, basically, right? So
yeah. But I think queen d3 obviously had escaped his team because at the time computers weren't showing it.
Yeah.
Probably computers thinking, here, we're rook and a piece up. That's pretty good.
Yeah. No, but it's... that was impressive, and Leko took the lead, and he kept it all the way till the end, right? And, it's hard not to feel pity for him, but Kramnik did actually create a humongous comeback and deserved what he did, right? But, I don't recall anyone else actually losing the last game of the title match. Well, maybe Schlechter against Lasker, actually. But, that is a tough... sorry?
Bronstein, my chess history is not great.
But he didn't lose the last game, did he? He needed to win it, I thought. But anyway, we will get to these guys.
It was the second to last, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we will get to these later, I think. But that is rough, obviously, and such. But and I don't know if it affected his later career, for instance. Somehow he seemed to... run a bit out of it. It's also, this is life-changing moments, right, that happens within a few hours in a final game of a world championship and such. And Leko has not quite been the same since. Well, he's still very, good, and also, he's working more as a trainer, actually, right, to some extent, I think.
Yeah, I know he's still working a lot on chess, loves it. If you've seen his commentary, he's still a lot into details, and he also has his enthusiasm, but his playing career, doesn't immediately vanish. I think he wins Weikantsee directly after, and he won Dortmund 2008 ahead of the great Jan Gustafsson, which probably was his biggest achievement. So he still has good results, but somehow he doesn't manage to stay at the top after, let's say, 2010.
Oh no, and
although
players...
He's not old.
Exactly. Players like Kramnik and Anand, who is older than him, actually managed to have, to hang in there at the top while Leko somewhat disappears, which is why, he makes it to the Hall of Fame, but he stays as number 44 compared to some of the other names we mentioned, right?
Yeah, still. His peak, and I think people forget that a bit was incredibly, incredibly high in not just this match against Kramnik, but from, I don't know exactly where it was, from 98 till 05 or something. He's very much a top player.
Exactly.
So, that is Peter Leko. Also, I'm not sure that belongs here, but he's also a very nice guy. Not sure that earns you points in the pyramid. But yeah.
It also doesn't mean that anyone we don't say that
all the other guys are evil. That's why I'm saying it. Anyway, Peter Leko, number 44.